MEF leadership session. I'm Rimma, Perelmuter, CEO of Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and excited to be back in the beautiful halls of the University of Barcelona. So we're here for the second time this year. And hope everyone who participated in the matching session earlier made some new friends and maybe even some new partners. For those of you who've just joined us, we're excited to be here for our leadership session, followed by the 16th annual MEF Connects event. So the leadership session is really a chance for our members to gather and network to address some of the core issues that are at the heart of the mobile ecosystem. And this year's theme is about creating a better future, a vision I'm sure all of you in the room share. At the same time, this is quite a profound year, one of a shifting regulatory landscape that will change the rules for all of us in the mobile ecosystem, whilst looking to empower and protect consumers. So new regulations such as PSD2 and GDPR are certainly front and center for many of you in the room, and they're creating a mix of opportunity and uncertainty, I would say. The shift is surely about creating trusted futures for consumers who we continue to serve and delight. And the opportunity is obviously to offer businesses the freedom to innovate and create richer, more personalized services. As you know, MEF has long championed bringing trust to the consumer and making it a core aspect of the services that the industry continues to drive. However, what's clear is that the rules alone, which may be considered prescriptives, will not solve the problem. And so innovation and industry collaboration is really key. Self-regulation has been a cornerstone of MEF's focus in helping members to agree rules of engagement necessary to address the changing regulatory landscape and grow consumer-first businesses. Many of you in the room participate in our messaging initiative and have been involved in creating our first code of conduct for the industry. And tomorrow at the FIRA, we'll be gathering members of our Consumer Trust Working Group to discuss the opportunity of writing a GDPR code of conduct. I hope all of you who are impacted will consider joining us for this really important meeting. So back to tonight. Our speakers tonight represent really a cross mix of the diverse mobile ecosystem. They'll be sharing their diverse views on how we prepare for the challenges ahead, how we look to build trust, and as an industry, how we look to create richer, more trusted services for consumers. The session will be chaired by the very entertaining and legendary, shall I say, Dave Birch, who many of you know. He is head of innovation from Consult Hyperion, so he will be moderating the session. And before we kick off, it just leaves me to thank our hosts for the evening, ForgeRock. Thanks for supporting us, and all our MWC partners, including Syntonic, CLX Communications, Kalera, Infinite Convergence, Hungama, and Telecoming. Immediately after the session, we'll convene for the MEF Connects event, which I'm sure most of you will be staying for and hopefully are looking forward to. It's our 16th annual event and always the best party at Congress. So stay tuned and enjoy the session. And now it is my pleasure and honor to welcome on stage Lasse Andresen, CTO of ForgeRock, who will kick off with a keynote on the future of IoT and trust. Lasse.
And as you see on my slide here, kind of like I'm the CTO for ForgeRock. I'm also the founder of ForgeRock. And before that, I I was actually almost a decade with Sun Microsystems, rest in peace, and been doing innovation and technology for a very long time. So I'm the technology guy, and I'm gonna hopefully not ruin this. There we go. So the good news is I'm only going to talk for a very short time, and I'm the technology guy, and afterwards I'm going to be kind of like teamed up with more clever people than myself that can talk about more on the business side and regulatory stuff. But what I wanted to do is to give you a little quick introduction about the technology and a couple of things that I'm seeing and happening out there. First of all, from a business perspective and technology, we are living in an extremely interesting time, kind of like what's happening out there with like 5G, kind of like all the sharing stuff, cars autonomy, and how new services are kind of like evolving every day is pretty fascinating. And of course, being behind the scenes on this, making technology that actually make it happen, it's pretty cool. So some of the guys have figured out that kind of like there's more money to be made out of like services, and kind of like somebody were thinking pretty fast of how you can take a phone device and make more money on services and applications. And the way I see it, kind of like how the car industry is looking like this now, it's kind of like it's a pretty big supermarket on wheels. You can make a lot of business by introducing services and not only selling the hardware itself. The other side you see is kind of like everything gets connected. Kind of first it was kind of like people and applications. Now it's services and things. It is kind of like even kind of like contracts looking from a blockchain perspective. So everything are connected and interconnected and make it pretty interesting, and also a little bit challenging how to make this happen. It used to be pretty easy in the identity world where I came from. You kind of like had a user interface, you had kind of like an application with some business logic, and you had a database, and that basically was it. Now kind of like you have all sorts of devices, phones, services, contracts, human, not human, everything interconnected, and you need a very different way of running your security paradigm and also your identity access management. Fundamental to this thing, especially around IoT, is trust. And how can you establish trust kind of from a device? We've been working many years now trying to do onboarding and kind of like establishing trust for humans and doing profiling, doing kind of like onboarding, doing proofing. The same things need to happen with an IoT device. I think this is the biggest challenge that we have going forward, but also the good news, I think we have a lot of answers to you guys that we can talk about more in the details afterwards if you're interested. So from security perspective, what is the problem in IoT? I think first of all, it has to be an end-to-end system. The hacker doesn't care if he kind of like are hacking, gets its way into the system through the application in the cloud, or he's compromising the firmware on the device, or in the transport. You need to look on this from end to end. And the other problem is you need a mix of skills. Because if you look on the cloud side, where you have application developers been doing mobile applications and web applications, if they start talking to them about an embedded device, different protocols, different kind of like programming system, totally different world of security goes down in the device side. So you need to find a combination also from skills to be able to do end-to-end system secure. And it has to be a chain of trust. And everything starts at the root. And if kind of like you can't trust that the operating system or the hardware root of trust, the BIOS, when the secure boot on the device itself is safe, it doesn't help if some of the other places in the chain is secure. Like if your operating system is secure but your device is compromised, yes, you're screwed, like we say in Norway. On a little bit about users and IoT, and first of all, like everything has an identity, and there's not a lot of magic here. If you think about what an identity is, it's just a set of attributes that describe something. For a human being, it's your name, your social security number, your email address, whatever. For a device, it has the same thing. It kind of like, it has a serial number. It probably has a manufacturer instead of a mom and dad. It's just attributes that describes it. And also when it comes to establishing trust, I don't think there is kind of like one way of that suits everything. You will have a different level of trust or that you need to, that you want to spend money on to establish a root of trust. So if you don't need high security, you don't go all the way to kind of like passport security. You can actually do with a confidence badge. You can see the same thing in IoT devices. Another trend that I will talk kind of like 30 seconds about is what I called back to the future. If you think about it, we came from the mainframe, everything centralized, then you went over to kind of like PC networks, kind of like distributed, then hallelujah, everything to the cloud. And that was the big thing. Now you see what's happening is a lot of the intelligence, security, a lot of the processing stuff is now happening at the device and at the edge. So you're going back to distributed again. And I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but it kind of like key word here is it has to be done by design. You can't do this afterwards. And we see a lot of manufacturers going out and only kind of thinking about connectivity. They get it online, they got a lot of devices out there, and kaboom, you have a problem. How do you fix that if you have kind of like 1 million devices that you just deploy to your homes? And also, the devices is there not for kind of like just connect for fun. It's all about data. And if you can enrich the data sets at the entry point instead of kind of like sending terabytes of data back to the data lake that you're doing analytics in, the value of the data will of course be much, much better. And what about privacy and consent? I think we're going to probably end up some discussions and questions about GDPR later on today, but it is, everything is connected, it is fundamental to make the trust and the relationship between the vendors and the customers. There are some initiatives taken from the industry because even if some vendors kind of like to think that they are the only one that matters, there will be different technology vendors out there, and we all need to communicate. We all need to speak. And the good news here when it comes to privacy consent, there are new standards like Rimma for user-managed access, which has been developed over the last 4 years. It's already out in version 2. If you haven't heard about it, please take a look. There are stuff that we can standardize and not vendor-specific. So with that, I think I'll leave it up to the panel or to Dave.
Great, thank you very much, Lasse. So we're going to have a discussion with the panel now to bring some of these issues alive for you and to understand where some of the focus is at the moment. I hope it will give you some optimism that some of those issues that look intractably complicated are actually being dealt with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly ask each member of the panel to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll start diving into the subject at hand. You know who Lasse is already, so let's start at the far end with Craig. Would you like to mention who you are, Craig?
I'm Craig Samuel. I'm with JT Global. I'm based in the US.
And you have some vague interest in identity for...
Well, my particular interest right now is Internet of Things.
Excellent stuff. I expect we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. Michael.
My name is Michael Becker. I'm with Identity Praxis representing Assurant, and we are in the business of helping people protect what matters most. And identity and personal information is what matters most to us nowadays.
Absolutely, it is. That's good. Were you in a rock band or something? That's quite good effects. Rashmi.
Hi, Rashmi Misra. I'm based out of the US as well. I run a team that are focused on IoT solutions with multiple partners and AI types of workloads on top of the different solutions as well.
Patrice?
Hi, I'm Patrice Slupowski. I'm with Orange, and I have the pleasure to be based in the freezing city of Paris, France. And I'm in charge of several innovation topics at Orange, in particular, all the sexy topics, you know, everything which is touching platforms like AI, IoT, API, identity. That's it.
Good stuff. Okay, so now let's start by addressing some of those higher level issues that Lasse touched on up there. So looking at the kind of things he talked about, it seems to me there's a pretty fundamental issue with trust in this new infrastructure, and it's not clear to me quite how we're going to bring that trust to consumers. I mean, just saying that we're trusted, that's probably not going to be enough. So let's start with that higher level question. Who'd like to take that on? How can we demonstrate this kind of trust? How can we show this kind of trust? How can we persuade consumers that they can trust us, by which I mean the operators and the value-added services on top of them, to handle this kind of data, to do this kind of stuff for them? Who's got some suggestions about that? Patrice, please.
Well, in fact, we're not starting from scratch. People have a certain level of trust. Maybe we should stop the mic when we're not speaking, you know? 1, 2, and that's better. So we have a level of trust in the service we're delivering today, and in the way we've been treating, for instance, some personal information by the past. So, for instance, as a carrier, as a telco, we have a certain level of trust, which is understood by the customer as the way we were not, for instance, listening to their conversations. So we're starting from a certain point, and when we look at studies currently, we're seeing that depends depending on the country, of course, but in France, if I'm taking this example, government is around 50% trust, banks or operators are at 40%, and OLED players are more at 30%, but that may move. So we're starting from that. So this means that anyone has at least half of the people to convince that they can trust them.
So this kind of trust, I think, so people trust you to not listen into their phone calls, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure I've seen any. I mean, let's say that's true, and they trust you not to read their text messages and things like that. But can you trust me on this one? Okay. But does that translate into a higher level trust? Like who do I trust have access to my car and my bank account and my house and all that kind of thing? Can operators really play in that space, guys?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at trust. There's the what and the why. So the what of trust is how you're going about doing it. And the why of trust is what your intentions are. And I think people want to know both sides. They want to know what you're going to do with my data, be transparent with the language, but more importantly, tell me what your intentions are. What are you going to use with my information? What kind of value are you going to generate from it? And I think what a lot of people disregard when they're thinking about this idea of trust is the implications of what happens when you lose it, or what if I mistrust you? So for instance, a Boston Consulting Group study just recently said that if consumers perceive mistrust in the use of their information, you could lose at least somewhere between 20 to 40% of top line revenue over 2 years.
That's what they said?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So you look at a really, really big data breach, which was really, what's a good example of a famous data breach that would, Target. Target is a good example of a famous data breach where they lost everybody's information. I mean, everybody in America's had their information stolen anyway. Nobody cares anymore. Egregious, right? What was the impact of that on the Target share price?
Short term, it was pretty heavy, but it came back.
Yeah.
So I think there's a growing awareness, though, as people are becoming more and more aware of the intentions of the organizations and what's happening.
Yeah, consumers have quite short memories, though, don't they, for this sort of thing? So
yeah, short memory, and at that time, I think that most of the people are not aware at all of the data topic. Right. So they have plenty of data, but as long as they have no perception of that, They're still in the time where they need to go through a certain steps of education, or a few very visible problems, like my identity has been stolen. This is a true occasion to learn about data when you have something which is really appearing in your landscape as a problem.
Is that possible, Craig? I mean, the reason why people didn't care about this stuff is because they just didn't understand how important the data is in the future.
I think that's part of it. I mean, I think I read another report a couple of years ago where people asked, how much would you need to be paid to give away this data set? And it was quite low, it was like $40 US. You know, if you give me $40, you can have that information, I don't care. So I think, you know, people don't really understand the value of their data. And there's this balance about, do I trust you, and an understanding of the value of what I actually have and how it's going to be monetized.
Okay, so if we just go with my suspicion for a moment then, that actually consumers aren't going to be the people shaping this. You know, people say, well, you know, you mustn't underestimate the stupidity of consumers sort of thing. Well, it's kind of true. I mean, consumers are not that bright by and large. Many of them, in the UK, a third of consumers think that Sherlock Holmes is a real person. So, I mean, are you really going to listen to them about...
I thought it was, actually.
So let's touch back on something. Apologies,
So
Rashmi.
David, there's an enterprise side of this as well, where I think enterprises are conscious of the fact that trust is an essential part of all the wonderful things they want to do on top of IoT, in terms of actually looking at this and saying, well, you know what, I want to do something with that data, but I can't do anything intelligent or more advanced with it unless I have a level of trust, and that's got to be engineered into my IoT system from the very beginning, all the way from the silicon to the devices, to an edge node, if they have an edge node, all the way back up to the cloud as well. And I think increasingly they're looking to organizations that can actually help them to be able to engineer that trust in it and be able to take what they are beginning to look at as a sort of entry point, a 101 into this space, so that they can then concentrate on the integrity of their data, how they share that, and how they then build models on top of it in terms of either machine learning, intelligence, or some sort of stream analytics, or even sort of an AI model.
But consumers who don't understand the intricacies of layered security models and trusted execution environments and so on might be thinking, somebody told me that the internet was built in order to withstand nuclear war. It's meant to be the most robust thing that was ever built. But a bunch of toasters took down Twitter. So clearly something's gone wrong. There's some kind of failure in the market. So let me just go back to something that Rimma said at the beginning about the kind of regulatory thing. So, okay, we're sensitive consumers and whatever, but I mean, I'm unconvinced that consumers understand enough about this to make rational choices. And the manufacturers don't either, because otherwise they put security in the devices, which they haven't done either.
I think the consumers start caring when they get annoyed or they get into trouble. And also, the other side of this is consent. Kind of like, if you can...
Now come back to consent in a moment. Just stay with that point about being annoyed, right? So, a friend of mine told me this story.
The challenging thing is that you're not aware that consumers are making rational choices. Neuroscience tells us that we're not rational beings. We're emotional beings that are occasionally rational. So when you're talking about trust and things like that, you're really catering to the higher construct of what's that emotional relationship I'm having with that brand, and do I trust them? Do I think they're going to be consistent? Are they going to do what they're going to say? Are they going to take care of me and follow the right rules? And that's
I think it's...
So you have to be a little bit careful if you're just looking for a rational framework.
But I think it's very interesting that you introduced the word brand there, because I think you could argue that in the past, brand has been because people don't have a trust calculus that's effective, brand substitutes for incomplete information about that. And in the past, maybe that was an okay substitute. Now it isn't. Brand doesn't matter to my bot. I mean, it might matter to me, but it doesn't matter to my AI. So brand, as we currently understand it, can't continue to function as that trust umbrella in the future, can it? I don't see how that can perpetuate.
I think also it kind of really depends on the use case. Kind of like, it's incredible what people actually do for free t-shirt. But the other side, kind of like if you're kind of the your kind of like Samsung TV is hacked and kind of like the camera is filming what you're doing in your home, I think people are starting to care. So I kind of think there's no way, some of the stuff people don't care about at all, or they don't understand it, but it kind of like if your home surveillance camera is streamed out on the internet, I think you start to care about it if you're trusting that device. So it's
a good idea for a TV show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Big Brother's got it.
It's interesting you're mentioning TV because there is a domain in which we're starting to see that even in the pure digital world, we still have some value associated with the brands, and it's news. We're seeing in studies that, and it's not true for everybody, every kind of news, but most of the time, the brand which is associated with it from a paper, a media, etc., is helping the people, and I'm pretty sure that in the topic of fake news, that will be one of the central parts.
Okay, I don't want to wander too much into fake news, and I'll come back to it in a minute, but let's go back to Rimma's point at the beginning. So let's just pretend, okay, I know you disagree with me, but let's just pretend consumers can't form rational opinions about trust and reputation and so on. So what if it's the regulatory envelope that Rimma was talking about, things like GDPR, PSD2, what if those are going to be the things that shape the trust environment that we have to respond to as businesses over the sort of short to medium term? If it's that regulatory envelope instead of consumers, what does that mean for the businesses that you're working on at the moment?
Well, I think that more than the set of constraints that everybody is seeing, because everybody has in the Outlook the date of May 25th, 2018. If you don't have that, please take care, you're going to be fired soon. The GDPR first date is, to me, the idea that we're starting to have a frame into which we're going to play, because the rules are known. The rules of the game are known, and the rules will be known not only to businesses but also to the consumer.
Let's just check on that with this audience, because this is more of a telco audience. So I'm just curious to see. So put your hand up if you sort of roughly understand the GDPR principles. Not in detail, but just roughly understand. You liars. Not one of you understands this. I don't believe that for a moment. Okay, disregard the... I think this is very highly implausible. According to the Financial Times, let's pretend Patrice, according to the Financial Times, European businesses are going to spend 8 billion euros on GDPR this year for what? Can somebody give us an example? No, I want to hear some positives from the audience.
I'm not saying you're wrong thinking that it's a European story, and that's part of the chance. It is the first time I'm seeing this kind of regulation, which is applying not only to European companies, but to all the companies who want to do business with European citizens. And as a matter of fact, it applies to companies like Orange, French headquarter company, but to a company which is based in Redmond, like Microsoft, or probably any company in the room.
And just to jump on that, it's not just a European story. I mean, you have... on August 24th last year, the Indian court came out and said privacy is a human right. So you have India now saying that privacy, data, the relationship to me is actually a human right. You have California that's just put GDPR-like legislation on the docket for vote this year. So and that's it. And because the U.S. government at federal level is repealing all of that, the states are taking over. So you have California doing it, you have New York State doing it. So this is a global phenomenon that's giving the rights to the individual and the human.
Yeah, and I remember that when I was mentioning privacy 10 years ago in the US, people were telling me, you're from old Europe, that's it. And it has changed.
So the GDPR is a really important part of the sort of proposition. So, for example, when Apple said yesterday that they're going to give the cryptographic keys for the iCloud to the Chinese government, does that comply with GDPR or not? I'm not sure. Can somebody just... Because I don't know the details, you see. I'm not as confident about it as
I'm
you.
not representing...
So we can say what we like about GDPR, but come on, guys, I want to hear something more concrete than we're worried about getting fined. What does GDPR give you in the identity business?
Well, as I was saying, it's about, first, rules. Second, everybody's obsessed with the compliance, and no one sees that suddenly it's the opportunity to reverse the system between the user giving some consent to the companies, moving from globally CRM to VRM, creating something where the customer is the main player, where users' data belongs to users, where in a matter of months or years, we could think about systems that are definitely going to give the control to users. And I consider personally that's a chance, not only for the consumer, but also for the market, who will be able to know exactly what are the rules of that story.
Surely it just means, I remember years and years and years ago, the European Commission passed this stringent thing about cookies. Remember this, the cookie law? And all this meant was every time you go to a website, you get this annoying pop-up about, and everybody just clicks OK and carries on. So isn't GDPR, everyone's going to get emails from everybody. Everyone's just going to click OK, and then we can carry on.
Well, I think something that's transpired over the last decade, maybe 20 years, is we have to be very cognizant of what's changed. And people are becoming more aware. Part of the reason why they're becoming more aware is it's no longer the mosquito in the room, that annoying junk mail, that annoying email. If my data is misused, financial fraud can be enacted upon me. My identity can be stolen. In fact, I can be killed. There has been studies and elements that have shown, like when data is misused, when data is put out there in the market that I did not agree to or wish to be out, it could lead to my death, whether or not it was because of suicide or was it because of an attack or because of some other means. So the stakes have gotten significantly higher.
Okay, that escalated pretty quickly, because I was thinking about stealing credit cards.
No. But again, my point being is there is material harm now that could happen, whereas before it was annoying. And that's part of why the stakes are getting higher and why people are paying attention. And you had noted that you would refer to GDPR investment as a cost. I would encourage everyone in the room to see it as an investment in new revenue streams and new opportunities to create relationships with your customers and to create new business models. Because what's going to happen is we're going to move from people agreeing to the terms of service with your business to you agreeing to their terms of access to them. And that will fundamentally pivot and shift the nature of industry over the next 5 years.
You agree with this, Patrice?
Yeah, I would like to be blunt. I think that we're not perceiving it like that, but digital is broken. The internet is dead. If we go on like that, if you forget the GDPR, all those stories, if you think about cybercrime, the way it's being developed, the way people are in some places, there are tens of thousands of people whose primary occupation is to steal data from people to try to create some more scams or any stories which are very well done. So I'm just saying that unless we're putting very strong mechanisms in terms of identity, digital identity, in terms of security, in terms of consumer protection through regulations, digital and the internet are dead stories.
Okay, but I want to talk about
methods to recover when we detect that something's happened. So I think it's also important to be able to have in our system, from an end-to-end perspective, technology that actually enables you to reset if you do realize something has happened or that there is a threat somewhere as well. That allows you to compartmentalize, say, a device so that you don't have to go and have to trash everything in it. To actually understand where data has been injected, erroneous data, misaligned data, so that you actually understand what's happened and you're able to actually reset a component or an aspect of your device as well.
Right.
So really engineering it in from the bottom.
But this goes to Lasse's point about engineering it from the very beginning.
Very much
so. I understand that. But I just want to go to the...
comment on where the sources of this data is coming from.
Yeah, I'm just listening in because we're talking about regulatory compliance and all the rest. Of course, this will all be sorted out when AI is policing all of this automatically and humans are taken out of the equation.
That can't come soon enough.
No, actually, and the point is, I like the concepts of GDPR. I think it's going to be an almighty mess in terms of enforcement, enactment, and it's going to be just messy. But it's not the first time when you have policy like this being interjected that's going to be
Because
messy.
so if we just think...
And bad people go around. I mean, we'll fix a hole here in the pipe, and then they're going to go around and do something else, and it just moves around. So we just have to be aware of that. It's going to take time. It's not all going to be perfect. But I think, you know, the thing we're not talking about is we're talking about, you know, the people element, right? But I think we're going to have 10 billion or 50 billion devices soon at an exponential rate, and they're all going to be doing things. They're going to be measuring things. They're going to be transmitting data. Most people will not be aware of most of what they're doing. We're not having a really good conversation about that yet.
Well, we're going to move on to the more detailed...
I'm talking about not this group conversation. I mean society. You know.
I agree with you. I just want to come back on that business point a bit first before we go down onto the IoT thing. So you said, you know, so there are these people out there. They're collecting up our personal data, and then they're using it to, you know, so like Facebook, for example, would be, you know, one of these groups of people.
Car companies. So there's a great book that just came out last November, The $0 Car. And every connected car is producing somewhere around $40,000 of data, which is now being used and monetized by industry. But I bought the car, I maintained the car, I drove the car, and in fact, because of all of that, I produced the data, but yet I'm not getting any of that value. So I think ultimately what will end up happening is privacy will become the new luxury good, and those people that can actually pay for it and afford it will have their privacy. Those that cannot or choose not to will get the free service. So in other words, if you want my data, give me the car. And so I fundamentally see, and that's kind of an extreme example, but I fundamentally see fundamental shifts in the nature of the business models as we go forward, as people become aware of the opportunities that are presented themselves that have never been presented before. So it's been suggested that people don't care. Well, they aren't aware. And once they become aware, some will choose, some will not. But it will be a choice.
So what Lasse said about UMA being the sort of platform for the next generation of these services, you can see that aligning with an actual monetization model that will transform things for average people.
Without a doubt.
None of these people are average, sorry, I didn't mean that.
Without a doubt. And the technologies of AI or a blockchain or cryptocurrency or things like that will help make micropayment, make different mechanisms possible.
All right.
Part of the story.
I think actually there's a very important point here. There's going to be a separation within our societies of those who have privacy and those who do not.
That's the look.
And the elites are going to, whoever elites are, those with money, wealth, whatever, are going to be the ones who control and have an ability to have privacy. And the rest of the unwashen humanity, whoever that might be, might well include the middle class and everything else, are not. And one of the greatest things, if you talk to people who are very successful technologists, they're protecting their families. They don't want their kids' data. They're doing exceptional things today to protect the privacy of everything they do and their families. Go talk to the 100 richest technology people in the world and ask them what they're doing in their home life. It's a very interesting conversation. So this is going to be a trend we're going to have, and it's going to expand, right? But the question is, where's that bar going to go down, and how much is it going to cost?
Well, but again, that too is a choice. If we want a society where that's the case, then that's the society we get. But if we want to create offers and services like Orange being able to provide tools and services to people in an economic way that allows them to protect themselves, then we can have that society. It's a choice.
Well, let's have a quick checkpoint with the audience here, because obviously we're not running away with this. So who agrees with Craig's nightmare vision of a dystopian future where privacy is a luxury good that's only available to a few people? It's just you and me, Craig. No one else buys this thing. We'll pick up that. Who agrees with Craig that GDPR is a bit like Brexit, but for identity rather than... Yeah, okay, we're closer with you on that sort of one.
Just to check, who understands English?
I think there was a lot more in the first one as well. They were just a wee bit hesitant, you know.
I agree with Craig, that's not what he said. I'm paraphrasing, but very slightly. Okay, so let's push these guys on the IoT stuff a bit more then, all right? So just as a sort of baseline, we haven't fixed identity for people. We don't quite know what's going on with GDPR, so blah, blah, blah. And now, to the point that was made earlier on, we're now going to put 10 billion things on the internet. So the problem that we used to have, which is hackers stealing your credit card data, is going to become hackers crashing your car and burning down your house, essentially. This is progress, right?
Your cheap car, you know, not your BMW.
Yes, no, I know the car's cheap, so you don't care if the car bursts into flames or whatever. It's not your car. Someone else has lent it to you. But just, would it make consumers feel slightly uncomfortable if, once we've connected all this stuff up to the internet, hackers start crashing their cars? Which I absolutely, 100% guarantee will happen. Once you connect all this stuff up, someone somewhere, because it's always people, some idiot somewhere will put the wrong password into their BMWs, or it'll turn out that to control the Mercedes you just need root/root for the login or something. Then we have a more serious problem, don't we? So we have to rely. Somebody said passing earlier on, maybe AI is the way out of this. I think that's not a joke. I think it might not just be the way out of it. I think it might be the only plausible hypothesis, because the devices cannot be smart enough.
Well, the humans can't be trusted.
And humans can't be trusted.
But the AI
especially the ones that program the AI.
And then the question is, who's going to have the core keys to the AI instruction set that's going to be the master rules which controls all these things in our lives? Is it going to be governments? Is it going to be certain elite, 10 richest people in the world that control,
Why are you looking at Rashmi when you say that?
What's that?
But the temperature, I'd be more worried if I was one of the cryptocurrency billionaires right now, actually, because they're the people who are actually going to get kidnapped and knocked over the head and all that sort of thing. Rashmi, given my crackpot theory that AI might be the only way of dealing with the AI, with the security problem in the Internet of Things, what are you guys doing about this? Have you actually started building anything real, or is this just all PowerPoint and hypothetical stuff?
Oh, thanks. I'd like to paint a less doomsday picture here, because actually...
It's Craig.
Don't blame me. There's two camps. There's the Zuckerberg and there's the Elon Musk school of thought on AI, right?
No, I'm going with Elon.
Right.
I've had it down here.
Right, and there's everything in between, right? But those are the two extremes. So the question is, which are you in?
No,
Democrat or Republican?
Let's have a more optimistic vision from Rashmi.
And it's fair enough, right? You could end up in these scenarios very quickly, and I think that's why at Microsoft we decided that actually it's really important to set some framework, boundaries, and really work with the ecosystem. And we set up the Partnership on AI, which is an open forum for people who are really working in AI to contribute, and very much putting into place a four-pillar environment such that we think will set the values for AI. And AI being important to this topic in the fact that if we're looking at a trusted opportunity, a trust opportunity in a connected world, IoT, I think people are collecting reams of data just so that they can bring their return on investment on these systems and be able to gain something from it. So what are these pillars? And they're four pillars underpinned by two essential ones as well. So I'll explain all six to you today. So first of all, fairness. Fairness to every person that is actually dealt with by the AI system. In other words, if you are a sick person, if you're being looked at for financial services, if you have some other AI system that's dealing with you, you should be treated in the same model as everybody else with that symptom, with that credit record, or whatever. And that also comes back to a view which I think one of my panelists also said in terms of humans being involved in this. And fairness also requires that we look at taking the biases out of data sets that humans inevitably are feeding into the AI systems. And that means that we've got to have diversity in those that actually build those systems, in the data sets, recognizing where those biases will and inevitably do come in, but also making sure that we're consistently comparing methodologies and models in order to make sure that we mitigate across those. So fairness being the first tenet. The other one is really reliability and safety, to make sure reliability that your system will do within the boundaries and the parameters that you expect it to operate, what you expect it to, and it will evolve into something that you expect it to as well. Making sure that we apply rigorous engineering capabilities that are already there in engineering, also to the creation and design of AI systems as well. And then we've discussed privacy and security quite extensively here, but also being able to recognize that privacy is a business imperative, as well as a need to do this in terms of really a groundwork for building trust. But also that you can build privacy into the use of data by maybe using techniques such as differential privacy and other state-of-the-art technologies that really allows you to separate the data from the information about the person, and we continue to invest in that space as well. And then the other pillar here is really to look at inclusiveness, making sure that the context and the need of the people that you're actually building this for is built into the AI system, and by that I mean people that are differently abled, that they can actually access the AI and that they can actually be able to use it as well. And the two big underpinnings we see in it are transparency, and I don't just mean by that publishing your AI algorithm, because that's notoriously not good enough, but really making sure that you're able to have a conversation and actually exemplify how you've been transparent and how your AI model actually delivers and makes those outcomes happen there as well. And oftentimes, if that's going to have something that's a consequence to somebody's life, you will need an expert or somebody else to determine that for you as well, human intervention. And last is accountability. We have accountability everywhere in things like healthcare, insurance. We need to make sure as an alliance, as a forum on the partnership of AI, that's what it strives to do, is make sure that there are foundations and systems ready for people to be accountable for as they design those AI systems. So really encourage you to look that up as the 7 principles of highly secure devices that we publish as well, and encourage you to look at that up.
I think you said a couple really important things there, but a couple things I want to react to it on is, one you said is like humans will inform the AI. So the data that we produce, whether it's coming from our IoT devices, or it's coming from the information I explicitly, implicitly share with the AI, will inform that. But we've not really talked about the very nature of data is going to change. So like, what is data? So for instance, a lot of businesses will say, well, I need to know if you're over 21 or not. Well, today, the way I tell you I'm over 21 is I give you my birthday. And I do that either through I tell you or some government validated ID. The way I'm going to do that potentially in the future is through zero knowledge truth. You don't need to know my birthday. You just need to know with some assurance that I'm over 21. So if I had a system that allowed me to then give permission that you know I'm over 21, for instance, say an emerging personal information management solution or a data store, that's all you need. And so therefore you can know I'm over 21 for the purposes of your business. No one else gets to have that data. No one else gets to have my birth date. And the next person that wants to have that information from me will have a different.
But you still have to, so Rashmi's, but you still have to have the kind of account. You can't hide everything.
No,
right,
everything she
You have
says
to have
right.
the accountability.
Everything
right?
she says right, but I'm saying the very nature of what data is or what we think it is today is not going to be what we think it is tomorrow. And the way we're going to gain access to that information with the human being the mediator of making the choice about me is going to fundamentally shift and change.
So who makes those choices? Should it be like industry bodies? Should it be companies? Should it be consumers? Should it be the law? I mean, I don't understand where the next step in this is.
I think it's ultimately a mix, but at one point when we talk about AI too, there will be AI representing the needs and interests of the business, but then there will be AI representing the needs and interests of me. And so there will be an AI associated to every individual, making and helping me learn my preferences and learn my rules on behalf of me based on my behavior.
Right.
And I think we've got to build in that user interaction with that data as well, because in the end we need people to give us more data. I think every business needs that as well. And so in order to build that trust cycle, we will have to have some interaction where I can go and choose how my data is used, in what context.
I know you like tangible things, so with offers which are already available on our site, we've launched in France something which is called Orange ID, which is basically some data attributes that we're using in some use cases where we have a benefit for the business, for instance, for a bank, we have a benefit for the end consumer, and we have a benefit for Orange as a company which is monetizing this data. For instance, when we want to confirm that you're 21, or if we want to confirm that you're the one taking money from the machine and from the ATM at the airport, at Barcelona's airport, it's better for the bank to check that you're roaming. It's better for you to have your operator confirm into your bank that you're roaming instead of receiving phone calls in the middle of the night from your bank assistant.
This is baby steps into Rashmi as well, because
yes.
this idea that the devices themselves can't be smart enough to make any of these decisions, that the decisions are actually back in the network, and you have AIs which are handling massive quantities. So when I go to the ATM, it's no longer looking at, do I have this chip, do I have this card? You have this whole network saying, it looks like Dave.
At this time, we're still very far from strong AI. AI is able to do 4 basic things, which is understanding a bit customer insight, being able to solve easy games problems like chess, etc., finding a needle in the haystack in a set of data. So it's basically very far from the famous singularity point where strong AI is able to dominate the world, etc., which is in the mindset of brilliant spirits like Elon Musk.
That's a very narrow way of thinking about AI.
No, I'm just saying that this is how people are imagining that AI would be, and I'm just saying that we're speaking about we're at the beginning of those stories with AI.
Is that true, Rashmi? Or do we have a slightly more sophisticated?
So leaving aside the question of strong versus weak AI, very, very specifically, there are several things that are being done today, and I see enterprises applying, or at least wanting to make sure that once they've got a pool of data that's integrity ridden, has the ability to answer the questions and the actions that they want, that they are applying them in certain areas. So being able to apply either a full-blown model that they may have built themselves from their own data, or actually calling APIs from the cloud and being able to train a model or reuse a trained model already, applying it to their data. Depending on where their ability is, they are actually being it, but it's confined to certain areas. So it would be either vision applicability, facial recognition, biosensing recognition, being able to detect the number of people in a room, being able to see, being able to have cognitive services. For example, we all know Cortana and all the other AI assistants there as well. And actually we're seeing things where people with abilities that are different are being able to be helped almost every day by something that helps them visually, if they're visually impaired, helping them to be able to see and to actually converse in different languages.
I think that's a very beautiful picture you're painting. Thank you very much. And I have a thing I've said a minute. I used to lecture years ago. One of the things I always said to students was, technology is neither good nor evil, it's what we decide to do with it. And the problem is humans are the people who decide to do with it. Right?
We can easily... sorry, I was just going to say, are we going to take some questions from the audience? Because personally, I really only care what the bots think, but MEF, we have to listen to people. So does anyone in the audience... please. Well, you can't swear, they turn it off if you swear. Can you try it again without swearing?
Well, I think I might be making the same point, but one of the things that Rashmi said was that the underlying principle is fairness. Fairness is an entirely subjective concept. So who decides what's fair? And if you haven't figured that out, it's doomed to failure, if that's your underlying principle. Because fairness is, your view of it is different to mine.
Okay, let's do a little experiment.
There can be other principles.
Let's
If you
just
take just one example with the fact that for the last 70 years on Earth, we have been living with the possibility of the Earth totally being devastated by nuclear weapon. And it hasn't happened because of other rules, like balance of power, like those elements. So I'm still a strong believer in the fact that technology is something which can be mastered, even if machines are behind.
All right, let's just do an instant little test just to respond to that, Rashmi, okay? So it's a very simple test to do with the audience, okay? So I'm driving my Microsoft car down the street, okay? I'm reading the...
Press Ctrl-Alt-Del first.
My Microsoft car is driving down the street, it started raining like this, okay? The car skids, the car can go left, and it can run over an old person, right? Economically inactive, no longer contributing to society, not paying taxes. Or the car could go right and run over, for example, Andrew. Okay. So you guys are training the IA now. This is those words, that's what these words mean.
Fundamental.
So you're training the AI now. So who thinks the car should run over the old person? And who thinks the car should run over Andrew? Oh, but that's what those words mean. When you talk about fairness and building fairness into the algorithms, I'm sorry, but that's what those words mean. Someone has to sit down and codify that and make those decisions. And my question is, should that be companies, which is what it is now, or should it be industry bodies, or should it be the law, or should it be consumers? No, because they're morons, they wouldn't know what to do about any of this. It's a tough question, right? So it's one thing to say, we have this IoT fantastic opportunity. It's another thing to say there are real security issues. Yet another thing to say, we feel, which I think is true, by the way, we feel that AI might be a way of negotiating some of those issues. That's a long, long way from having anything in place and working, and the hackers would have crashed all our cars by then. So
I think also it really shows the power of identity, because if you don't know the identity, you don't know it.
That's true, because the old person that you're going to run over could be Bill Gates, right? The car's got to know who it's about to run over,
yes.
Right? You can't just go around running over people willy-nilly without knowing who they are. So he's got a good point.
I mean, AI doesn't work that way.
Yeah, AI doesn't work without identity.
But David, just to answer the fairness point that I did say was that the AI should treat everybody equally. In other words, if you have those symptoms, then you should be treated equally. If you have the same credit record, you should be, but if it affects a person's life, as I said, ultimately a subject matter expert needs to be involved in it. It's not enough for AI designers just to be the subject expert, the master and the judge themselves, by having...
But that's not, with respect, that's not going to happen. And you know why the car crashed? Because it's getting its Microsoft update over the air on Tuesday. Right. That's going to be the next problem we're going to have.
Actually, I want to make 2 points on this.
I'll just tell you a real story about this. A friend of mine told me the story. He had one of those Philips Hue light things happening. So he had all the lights in his house controlled by some clever Internet thing on his phone, whatever. And so he invited a woman. Are we allowed to say this in public? I'm not sure what the new rules are. No, because I'm looking to you for my #MeToo advisor. I don't know. You've got to be careful what you say nowadays. But he invited a young lady back to his apartment for a romantic, assignation, whatever. And he spent ages messing around getting these lights set up so they'd be like in exactly the most romantic configuration for the lights, like blue over here and yellow up. He spent ages getting this right? He gets back to the apartment, goes in, brings the young lady into his apartment, flicks on the switch, and a thing came up on his phone which says software updating. And it was 9 minutes in the dark before the lights came up. That's what he told me.
I wonder,
this is a way to show love.
This is your future. This is the vision of your future.
2 comments to your car example. I've heard that example a long time. I think it's going to be dealt with the exact same way it's dealt with in the real world today. If I'm a human being and I need to make that choice, I'll make the choice, and then the society figures out what the answer is. We'll have a court system. We'll have adjudication. We'll go back and say, why did that entity make that choice at the time? and then we'll fix the system retroactively. That's the way it works.
I think we should do it with
and that's where
guys.
accountability comes into play, right? So the point that Patrice made earlier, I think is critically important in that, we've been talking about a lot of highfalutin ideas, AI and blockchain and this and that, but it's really going to come down to the practicality of immediate use cases, like fraud detection, or companies like Orange giving and helping educate people on the tools for appropriate digital behavior. Like, here's password management tools. Stop using the same username and password everywhere. Here's a tracker tool so you can manage the way you're being monitored. And that's going to be a contingent upon us as business to supply individuals and train them with the appropriate tools to be successful in this modern society. And that's the next step.
Do we have time to take one more question from the floor? So, okay, we can take one more. You, sir, I've never seen you before in my life. Please.
So there was an interesting. A number of you have been talking about algorithms and accountability. One of the key things that I've certainly learned about AI, about deep learning-based systems, is that actually there are no algorithms, and once you've trained deep learning systems deeply enough, their behavior is, to a human, unpredictable. You can't assign accountability to a fully trained deep learning system. You can hope that it'll do what you intended it to do, but actually in your case, David, you probably, if you haven't specifically trained it for that, you actually don't know what it's going to do.
That's quite a difficult question, so I will only
but where I'm going with this is, under GDPR, a certain outcome, there was an obligation to ensure fairness and various other predictabilities.
Under GDPR?
Fairness.
No.
Yes, absolutely. Automated decision making.
Look,
and the point is that if you get it wrong, forget the regulators, you'll get sued for non-monetary damages. So that's the thing that nobody's talking about. Everyone's talking about Article 82 and the regulators.
Is fully compliant with all the laws of Madagascar.
And that's going to end up with Michael Becker having to cover the unpredictable liabilities of all of these companies that are going to get sued in class actions for the unpredicted and unforeseen actions of AI systems that have made odd inferences about data and weird decisions that nobody predicted, producing gigantic liabilities on companies which they're going to come back into you to try and cover. How do you feel about that?
Okay, I'm only going to allow people to... It's a very complicated question. You're only allowed to answer that question if you have a PhD in artificial intelligence. Anybody? Okay, Rashmi.
I agree that there's many issues, and that's why our framework, our hypothesis of how AI systems need to be engineered and developed and seen from a societal and ethical perspective has accountability at the bottom and transparency in there as well. And the reason being is that it is notoriously difficult to predict what a deep learning, a recurrent deep learning network will actually show you and what will it come out with. However, as engineers in this space, we know what we expect it to happen, and we know how we expect it to perform and even evolve. And rigorous testing must be applied there. And yes, those capabilities are hard, and that's why we set forward a hypothesis of a position that says, actually, we should be applying those same rigorous methods. We should also be testing with different data sets and different methodologies and different algorithms as well to make sure we mitigate, insofar as we can, those things. And it's really a case of putting a position out there saying, well, yes, we can have a doomsday scenario, but let's try as a society to position this technology, which is inevitably coming really fast, in a way that we can all live with, and we feel that we've at least done what we can in order to have that base level.
Thank you for that very positive view of that. So unfortunately, my robot AI supercomputer, which knows all of my preferences, has selected gin and tonic for me downstairs. It's very good news. So listen, I'm sorry we have to get... All of these guys are coming downstairs with us now, so you can carry on questioning downstairs. I just want to say, these guys are experts. None of them knew what questions I was going to throw at them. They gave you their honest opinions about things and not a load of PR crap. So please join me in thanking them for their honesty.